Hey guys, Navinat on No Limit Hold'em. I've been playing some 6 Max, some sit and goes in general. This one's a 6 Max. I do play these from time to time. I don't usually make videos on them just because they take a long time to play. But this one went pretty quickly. What I may do is chop out like the middle and just show the beginning and end. But I think it's something that I want to start doing more of because I find that I do really well with them. I think my return on investment is probably higher with sit and go tournaments than anything else. If you were watching back when I was New School Poker Strat, if you were watching the Run It Up stuff that I did, that was by and large made possible because I was taking the frequent player points to $2.59, taking $2.59 and rolling it up to $100, giving me enough money to play $5 heads up sit and goes and so on and so forth up to the 400s was mostly made possible because of my how well I was doing with the sit and goes. So if you're interested in watching this type of stuff and getting input on sit and go tournaments, let me know. I'm more than happy to do it. Again, it's tough because you find yourself busting out of them fairly often, and that's never going to make an interesting video when you get queens in versus kings 8 minutes into the video and lose. It makes for a pretty quick video, and when you're trying to narrate through it, you never know when it's going to be over. Now this, I'm narrating after the fact, so this has already been played. And the whole thing only goes 30 minutes, so I know kind of what my constraints are. So, and that's something I want to talk to all of my subscribers and anybody that's just happening across this. It looks like we're starting to pick up a little bit of steam. I mean, I've got thousands of viewers and watchers and people that I talk to on PokerTube, but on YouTube, I mean, this is where I really want to be. This is where I'm sending most of my attention, doing most of my work, and I'm trying to get something going here. And it seems like pretty recently there's been some activity. I went from like 12 subscribers over a period of a year or something, to 36 in the last couple of weeks. So something's happening. And if you guys are telling your friends and whatnot about, if you're sending them videos or from whatever the case is, if you're helping me out, I appreciate it. And if not, help me out. And one of the ways that you could do that is by telling me what you want to see. I want to make videos that you want to watch, and I want to get interactive. I'm going to post a video up about actually kind of a call to action. I've got some things going on. It seems like a fairly steady stream, not super steady, but I'm getting some coaching gigs in, and I've got some writing things going on, and I've been dabbling with $2, $5 No Limit Hold'em at Hollywood Casino in Perrysburg, and then here in the Cleveland a little bit also. My family's in Toledo, and I live near Cleveland, so and I've been doing real well. So I'm thinking about making a transition, but that'll come in a later video for, I guess, the hardcore Navinat lovers out there. But yeah, so here, I guess I'm just going to get on with kind of my overall look at how I like to play low stakes sit and goes. And one thing I like is when Villain donk jams the river with air, and I have a flush. So what I want to do is right off the bat just start taking notes, and I take tons and tons of notes, and I think it's way more important than a HUD on Bovada. I think it's way more important by far when you're playing an anonymous site, and especially when you're playing tournaments where players will play different from one blind round to the next. So the first thing I want to say is make sure that you come up with a good labeling system. The labels that I use like orange for tight aggressive, and the labeling system that I use is just for pre-flop. So I can look at that player's label, I know what color it is, and that tells me how he tends to play before the flop. That system for me is, it can be whatever you want, but orange is tight aggressive, like a tag. Yellow is a nit. The white is nondescript. It means that I've taken notes on that player, but I don't know much about his pre-flop tendencies yet. Green means that he seems like he's doing some things correctly pre-flop, and he might be like a good player. And red is lag, like more like maniacal, because green's usually going to be somewhere between tag and lag. If I was going to annotate or actually just chart myself in this color chart, I would say that I'm going to be green. And it's what I used to call a mag, like moderate aggressive, like somewhere between tag and loose aggressive. Another thing, I think that if you can get conversation going, it's a great idea. And if you can't, no harm, no foul, right? If you can get people talking, and I always suggest, well, I always do it myself, in the first couple of orbits at least, if you can get somebody talking, very often they will tell you way more than they ought to. They'll say things like, that guy just donk bet, or he was repping this, or his range looked that. And especially if you frequent the different poker forums, if you can get a feel for if your opponent, you can sometimes just come right out and ask, hey, are you on 2+2? And they'll just tell you. And players that are pretty active on 2+2 have a pretty particular flavor. They do similar things, and if you get in the habit of figuring that out. Now that's another little situation right there. If you saw the hand that just went down, if not, rewind it and watch it. I think it was very telling. This is something you definitely need to be on the lookout for. When you see a showdown, it's like a cache of information. This dude just he had the straight on the turn, checked it, it checked back, and then the river card came off and he checked again. The guy bet, he raised. So the guy is capable of checking the nuts, and that's important to know. And especially when it goes check on the turn, that he would take a line like check raise river after the turn and check. It shows that he is thinking out of the box. He's not doing everything quote unquote standard. He's doing some things that are non-procedural. Like the more procedural kind of standard thing to do is take the lead with your value hands and with whatever number of bluffs you want to throw in once an opponent has done a non-procedural thing like check back. He didn't do that. That's either based on a read he had, or he's just trying to mix things up. But either way, it's important for us to know that he has it in his repertoire. That's something he can do. Okay, so here we have gut shot, overcard, and we've got a pair. So this is a hand I think that's going to play very good as a check and call on the flop, and because villain did not bet the flop, I think we could have still checked and called on the turn. And when the river card comes and it's a king, I think we can still check and call, but not a lot of time to go into exactly why that is right now, but I guess in the abbreviated version is it's because we had showdown value and a draw. So that means that the showdown value benefits from trying to get closer to showdown, and the draw helps us because we'll be able to call a bet, which is very likely to come once we take a range capping line. I guess another nice thing I will say about it is when you check back with, or you take a very passive line with something like a pair plus a draw, is when you actually hit your draw, it's going to be very hard for your opponent to suss out, or if you improve to trips, it can be difficult for an opponent to buy into that notion. Not all players are going to, for some players it would look very natural, but some players have a hard time believing you checked a pair twice, for instance. Okay, so here we obviously are just going to bow out, not a lot to say about that. But what's going to be interesting is what villain here, or what player one does here, once he's 3-bet. He does call. Now, in case you're not understanding the note I'm making here, that why I'm saying that it seems like he understands showdown value, is he actually had that same pair of jacks when he checked down against my jacks with a better kicker. We also know that he opened Jack 10 suited from middle position. And I say middle position, but it was from under the gun, but there's 4 or 5 players at the time. So very noteworthy. One thing that I think is important too, beyond just taking notes and paying attention to your opponent's propensities, obviously that's going to catapult you. It's going to come out. It's going to take you very far when it comes to the adjustments that you'll need to make to your ranges and how you want to play in your lines, and especially how you want to adjust your lines based on specific opponents. But one thing that players neglect very often is to do the same thing with themselves. Like kind of, if I'm you, what I might do, this is a suggestion if you're not, if you haven't thought about this before, is get out a literal pad, a notepad, or open up like some sort of note program or whatever. Just have someplace you can type or write about yourself, and take notes about what you've done, what your opponents have seen, what your frequencies have looked like, anything that might be noteworthy to your opponents, so you can kind of, this I think is a pretty slick value right here. If you didn't pay attention, rewind this. I'm pretty proud of this one. When they time bank, and then you've got queens here, right? There's a king out. When they time bank and eventually call and they ship you the pot, it's a great feeling. It was a little thin, but it seemed like I just always had the best hand. But that was that opponent that had played the nuts pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Pretty, well, sneaky. Yeah, so anyway, knowing what your table image is massively important. Knowing how you're perceived is going to help you to take advantage of those perceptions. Whenever you play one style, and I don't ever recommend anyone play an actual style, I think your style ought to be to adjust and to have sort of like a Bruce Lee Jeet Kune Do concept, or Jeet Kune Do approach to poker. It was have the style of no styles. I think a lot of what Bruce Lee said about the martial arts, if you've read any of it or heard any of it, I think it applies very well to Nolan Oldham, and probably life in general. But when my opponent expands, I contract. When he contracts, I expand. And when the opening's there, I don't hit it; hits all by itself. That kind of mentality. Water can crash, water can flow. You put water in a jar, water becomes a jar. Be like water. I think that's really good poker advice. I don't think you should have a style. But if you find that you've been playing a style, if you think that you've been playing pretty tight, pretty aggressive, or pretty nitty, if your outward appearance, maybe you've just been carved up the entire game. Like one of the things I remember about this tournament, I played this morning, it's night now, but I remembered that I was opening very few buttons, just not because I don't open a lot of buttons, but because I was getting dealt hands like 5-2 offsuit and 7-3 every time it folded to me on the button. So I kind of made a mental note that, and I think the same thing from the small blind. I had not been opening any hands from the small blind, but it folded to me. I think that's why I make this open here, in fact. But yeah, so knowing what your opponents might think about you is going to go a long way to helping you not really construct ranges, but adjust your ranges. That's a shitty card, huh? When we bet and get exactly called on that flop, we're not happy from that. We're not 10 rolls off, but we're not folding, but I think checking and calling is good. And especially when it's such a tiny bet, we obviously can't fold. But the other option might have been to click it back, but we don't want to get blown off of our top pair with against a potential draw or something when we're getting such a good price. Yeah, but aside from just being very, very aware of your image, I think it's another thing that's overlooked is I don't think players are often aware of where they're at inside or within the confines of their own range when they play a hand. Those two things are not, the same thing, but they kind of go hand in hand. But what I would recommend is not only do you get this pad, and if you're going to start playing, if you're playing heads up, then I think there's like this game flow thing, this feel, that kind of makes it silly to take notes, because one of the things I love most about Heads Up, No Limit Hold'em is it's like the metagame is alive. There's a flow. There's like a feel that comes into it where you start to kind of figure out not just your opponent's tendencies, but even his mood, like how he's thinking, not just overall about poker. Well, that's part of it, but I mean how he's thinking right here, right now, in this exact hand. It doesn't leave a lot of room to take notes, but it's kind of its own thing. And I think when you get beyond just the very most basic, fundamental, and mechanical aspects of Heads Up, No Limit Hold'em, what's going to take you to that next level is really when you start to kind of get a vibe from your opponent and sort of feel like, when is he about to snap? When is he getting ready to make an adjustment? Not just like when did he adjust, or when is, but actually like when is he going to adjust? And it's very, very possible to do that, because especially in a heads-up cash game, if you're playing a heads-up cash game and it goes like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours even, oftentimes you'll get into a situation where you and your opponent are adjusting and then readjusting. You're counter-adjusting, and then you're reacting to the counter-adjustments. And within those movements and adjustments, you can find patterns. And even within the patterns, where people try to break their patterns, you can even kind of find patterns within the way players will start to break their patterns. And some players will make very smooth adjustments from one end of the spectrum to the other, and other players will make binary adjustments where they just go from type A to type B in a snap, just in the blink of an eye. And if you can figure out, if they're making the Bayesian type adjustments where they're doing like these slow, smooth, spectral adjustments, it's not so hard. I mean, you kind of know where they're at in their flow. But when you can kind of key in on when your opponent is about to snap from one style to another, and be exactly one step ahead of them, you can make life very difficult for them and very profitable for you. But yeah, about your own range, playing your range. I'm likely going to play this hand, so maybe we'll do it here. Maybe we'll think about it here and see how it works out here. We've got Jack 8 suited. We're going to be open raising here, and I would say that we're about in the middle of our raising range. Okay, now we flop top pair. We're near the top of the range of hands that we raise and then c-bet. When we bet the turn as a double barrel, now we're probably back to like the middle of our range. And knowing where you're at within the range of hands you could possibly have taken all the actions you've taken up to that point will help you, especially when you have to react defensively. Like for instance, if you get into a spot where your opponent seems like if you're against a knowledgeable, good opponent, we got pretty lucky there. I think it's a cooler, right? We're always going to rip nines, ace 9, 9 big blinds on the button. And he's always going to call us with ace 10, so the cards just kind of prove themselves. What was I saying? Yeah, so like, especially when your opponent starts becoming aggressive and you don't really know what to do, this is something that applies to heads up also, maybe even more so. But when you're playing against a good player and you figured out that he does know a bit about your game, and he's trying to exploit you, and he's trying to put you in bad spots, not knowing where you're at within your range is detrimental. I mean, when you get to a spot where you have taken any specific line on any individual line, like let's say that you raised pre-flop, bet the flop, and then checked the turn. When your opponent then moves all in for 1.5 times the size of the pot, you can't just fold everything. I mean, unless there's something specific about the board that just makes it so much better for your opponent's range than it is for your range, you should usually have some number of hands that are going to check and call. So if you can't do that, if you don't have a range of hands that's going to check and call, then you just have to understand that a knowledgeable opponent is going to be able to turn a profit with any two cards in that spot. Now there will come situations where, let's say that you're opening a tight range at a weak table, a full ring, like say a 2-5 million holding live cash game, and you're open raising a range like pocket eights plus, ace queen plus, and maybe ace jack suited and king queen suited only, and you've got kind of a looser, more aggressive, but good player that's the villain in the hand. If you open raise from under the gun and he calls you from the button, and the flop comes out 3, 4, 5, I mean, yeah, you're going to have a hard time defending against his aggression without having to splash stuff into your opening range from under the gun. It's going to be bad for you at the rest of, against the rest of the opponents. But when you're playing heads up, you really can take these things like board coverage into consideration. Or if you're playing 6-max even, or you started out in a 6-max tournament and the thing breaks down to 3 players left, you know who's able, or you ought to know who might be able to really give you a hard time by applying, say, a ton of pressure whenever you take a line that looks like it's capped your range. So when you take a line that looks like it caps your range, let's say you open raise ace 8 suited. In this scenario here, let's say we open ace 9 offsuit on the button, and the big blind calls, and the flop comes out ace 2, 3 rainbow. If we bet the flop, get called, and the turn card comes off, whatever it happens to be, and it goes check, check, and because you figure that your opponent's in it, or maybe the board runs out like ace 2, 3, 4, and so you check back thinking that your opponent's not going to call you with too many worse hands because he's running out of top pairs that you beat, and there's straights and stuff that come in, and maybe the flush card hits, and it's just not a good spot for you to bet your top pair marginal kicker. When you check back and your opponent moves all in for one pot size bet on the river, if you are at the tip top of your range, you've got to call him or allow him to turn a profit with his entire range. And again, there are situations where it makes sense to allow your opponent just to auto profit with whatever he's holding. But there are situations where, usually situations that are very marginal and mediocre, where you're in a spot where you really don't know what to do. The reason you don't know what to do is because you don't know what your range looks like. If you knew that you were in a spot where, hey, this is no big deal, I can check and fold here because I'm going to get to this exact spot with tons of hands that are better than this, then you can check and fold and not feel too awful about it. But if you get to a spot where you're in a really sticky situation and you find yourself checking, hoping that your opponent doesn't bet, once he bets, you fold, and then you realize, damn, I never have a better hand than the hand I had when I hit the check button. And then you fold to a bet anyway, there's a pretty good chance you did something wrong somewhere. Again, not always. But unless a board or a run out is specifically bad for your range and good for your opponent's range, you should not be folding the top of your range. So it's, and there's also spots that are going to come up where you have a hand that you typically would check back for showdown value. You have to, if you're playing against a good player and you know where you're at in your range, it may be the case that you never get to this spot with a worse hand, and so you should use it as a bluff. If you notice the jump right there, I had to cut out some stuff. I started talking while I was playing this tournament originally and didn't realize it, so it was like I was talking over myself. But yeah, being aware of your range is going to help you know when to make a value bet. I mean, if you've got tons and tons of strong hands and you get to a spot, like a river spot, where your hand is not that strong, it maybe doesn't make that much sense for you to make a value bet. It may be too thin if your opponent's paying attention. For instance, if you open raise a tight range under the gun, get called by that same player we were talking about, that good thinking player that calls from the button, and the flop comes out ace, queen, 3 rainbow, if you have a hand like ace, jack suited, it may not make sense for you to continuation bet the flop because you're probably pretty near the bottom of your range, or if it comes out like ace, king, queen, where not only, and you have something like ace, jack, not only are you near the bottom of your range, or at least nowhere near the top of it, but it's unlikely that your opponent's going to call you with, well, I mean, because your opponent's a good thinking player and you're near the bottom of your range with your ace, jack, it's unlikely that you're going to get action. The other problem is once you bet, your opponent might be able to raise, and probably would be able to raise if he was real good and knew your exact opening range, and your range was 9s plus, and ace, jack suited, king, queen suited, and ace, queen offsuit plus. If that's your entire range, but he's got all the like medium suited connectors, then he's got the nuts on the flop potentially. You don't, and if you're deep enough, then he ought to be able to win that pot from you. So understanding things like that and paying attention to them in game, that's really the. If there's anything that you're taking away from this video, I hope it's that. I hope you take away that you need to be aware of your image, and you need to be aware of where you're at within your range. Of all the hands you have, okay, here he's going to, let's just do an example here. He raises, and, well, okay, this is going to be a reshove, but, okay, where are we? On all the hands that we have that are going to reshove, I bet you we're near the bottom of our range. What does that mean? It means we hope he folds, right? Well, that's obviously simple. It's a simple, now, where are we with our open shoving range? Well, we're going to be shoving tons of hands that are worse than this, so we're hoping for a call. If you are near the bottom of your range in any spot in poker, and you're betting, you're hoping for a fold. If you're at the bottom of your range and you want to have bluffs in your range, you ought to be betting with that hand. If you're near the top of your range and you still don't feel like you can make a value bet, then either something very weird happened in the hand, or it ran out very bad for you, or you're doing something wrong. You're making mistakes somewhere. It might not necessarily be in the spot that you're not able to value bet, but being cognizant, paying attention to these things, it's going to help you get a lot better. It may be, for any number of you that are watching, it may be what's going to be the next step of your poker progress. Well, that wraps up my spiel. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to making the next video, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. I'm going to do a video that's a call to action. I want some more comments and some more interaction. Until next time, guys, Navinat over and out. Good quote, Luck, exclamation point, end quote.